You can start.
Professor Mitra, thank you very much for coming to the TESOL Macedonia Thrace conference for 2017. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned in your very interesting presentation that assessment nowadays is a big hurdle or obstacle. And I would like to ask you, in what way these obstacles or hurdle can be overcome?
Well, first of all, the assessment system is outdated because it was actually quite relevant at the time when it was invented, but that relevance doesn't extend to now because it measures recall of lessons. So there's an assumption that there's a lesson and then that how much of that can you recall, and then you're asked questions. That situation has changed because, as I said in my talk, the whole idea of the lesson itself has changed. The lesson can be from anything, from anywhere. So if all of us have smartphones, then why would we not be allowed to consult them if we are asked a question? It's like asking someone to tell the time and then say, don't look at your watch. Doesn't make sense. So I can think of how that change will happen, that the nature of your question has to be such that it cannot be just answered in 2 seconds from the internet. It's something that you have to think and answer. But the problem is that who is going to assess or who is going to correct those answers? The examination system is dumbed down when there are large numbers because you need to have a large number of examiners who will all of them mark the same way. That's a big hurdle. We need to get out of that. Maybe machines will do that better if it comes to a qualitative answer. Or we follow assessment as it is done, for example, in music. If I want to know whether you can play the violin, there's no point giving you a multiple choice questions on it. I have to give you a violin and I have to say play it. And then I need a judge who I trust who will say yes, she can. Or take the PhD as a degree. There is no examination. It's a verbal, it's called a defense. You defend your position. So there are alternative systems which we trust very much. The PhD is the highest degree that we have. So perhaps we should have different versions of it and bring it down the ladder. I would love to see an exam which looks like a PhD for 9-year-olds.
Thank you.
According to what you just said, how do you see schools in 20 years from now then?
20 years. Well, one way to do this. 20 years from today must be at least as different from today as 20 years ago was.
It should be.
It will be more probably, but anyway. So let's just look at 20 years ago. Okay, if you look at 20 years ago, there was no Wikipedia, there was no Google, there was almost nothing. There were no smartphones. The internet was barely there, etc. So I can safely say that 20 years from now, there will be things which are equally unimaginable at this point in that. And the suggestion I was trying to make in the pre-conference talk was that we may redefine the word knowing, and that will define the school of tomorrow. See, why do you go to school? So that you can know things. What happens if knowing is no longer as important as it used to be? And should we close down schools? No. But the school then has to do something else. And I like the word comprehension. I'm increasingly getting more fond of the word comprehension as opposed to knowing. Because knowing is a kind of a formula. You know, I know this, I don't know this. But if you say I comprehend, then that's a little wider, I think. So perhaps schools will move more from knowing things to comprehending the world that we live in.
So you mean that comprehension includes more skills than knowledge, than knowing does?
I think so. If you take the English sense of the word, I think, I'm just trying to think of an example, but if you say, I know arithmetic, that's knowing. But if you say I comprehend arithmetic, then I may not be able to multiply properly. But if I comprehend arithmetic, I'm probably better off than if I know it.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense. So that's the direction I think schools should go in, and perhaps will have to go as we get more and more integrated with our machines.
In the context of foreign language learning, how can the findings of your experiment be applied to this field?
No, I'm very confused about language learning. Um, one of the not so nice things to say would be that are we headed towards a world where learning a language is no longer meaningful, in the sense that I can talk to you in any language and you would understand. Okay, we're very close to that. You know, there are people who are experimenting with telephones that will do it in real time. So the other end is speaking in Japanese and you're listening in Greek. And then you speak in Greek and your voice comes out in Japanese at the other end. What does that do to language? In a way, like the last question, that knowing, oh, such a great thing, and then you say, but as an institution, it seems to be going away. So perhaps this whole idea of I know a language will not mean very much. Not good news for some, but I would embrace it because it will have an enormous unifying potential. The ability to read the literature of any language, the ability to communicate with people from any culture. Imagine what a change that will make to the world.
And this gives me now, it ignites me to say that one thing I know is that I know nothing, as Socrates said. So how do you relate your pedagogical approach to the Socratic method?
Well, the Socratic method obviously was centuries ahead of its time. I think everybody accepts that. Everybody accepts the fact that Socrates was clearly a genius, prodigy, or whatever you want to call it. What was he saying is something that has echoed through education since his time. Essentially, what he was saying was that your comprehension must come from inside and not from the outside, which is the reverse of Victorian schooling, where the teacher delivers and you receive. In the Socratic method, you create the answer. Children love it, and everybody should love it. But as I jokingly said in the conference, to a man of that stature, what did we do?
So thank you very much.
Thank you.